If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Hi, please will you do another episode of your podcast? I'm having withdrawal symptoms and I'd love it. Thank you so much. I think you're brilliant. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Broads. This is Crystal.
This is Renee, and we are the True Crime Broads.
And thank you so much for tuning in. Well, first of all, you might have heard that recording at the beginning just now that was played. I didn't even know that feature existed.
I didn't either.
Some really nice person left us a really sweet note on Anchor. So there it is. We just thought we would share it with you guys and let you know how much we appreciate you. And thank you for leaving us a message.
Yeah, it really means a lot to us.
Okay. And, did you want to say her first name, Renee?
Yeah, Ursula.
Ursula, that's right. Ursula, you are so sweet. Thank you. I was so excited to see that. And then when we clicked on it, we just couldn't believe how nice your message was. So thanks again. And we're here tonight to obviously discuss the Missy Bevers case, which is what we've done on every episode. Even the episode that wasn't about her case, we still talked about her. And tonight, Renee and I were going to start off with something a little bit different. The case has been slow. We really don't have any news to report, but we are going to do some more things about the case. So there's some things we haven't covered before that we want to cover. But first, we were going to share, Renee and I have each had stories happen to us recently that are unusual, and they both pertain to true crime. Renee's is very recent, and I'll tell mine first. Mine's from quite a while back. Okay, so basically, Renee, do you want to tell what we're going to talk about? Or do you want me to?
We are going to talk about foot fetishes. I mean, it's something that I'm sure you don't hear a lot of talk about it. I'm sure most people have heard of it. And we were talking one day, and both of us just seemed to have a story about it. So we just thought it would be interesting to talk about since it does pertain to true crime. And it is quite interesting. So, Chris, tell your story.
Okay, so I actually had my foot molested on 2 separate occasions, which has got to be a record. These are foot fetish stories that I was not a willing participant in. So the first time it happened to me, I was on a job interview. I thought it was a job interview. The agency I was working for would send me on assignments while I was home. I traveled working car shows. This is quite a while back. I don't know why I said it was recent. It's really not. It's quite a while back. And I did auto shows. So I would travel, the New York Auto Show, the Boston Auto Show, Detroit Auto Show. I did them locally, but there would be breaks in between the shows. And of course they wouldn't pay us because there's nothing for us to do in between. So we would come home and just wait until our next flight out to work the next car show. Well, in between car shows, I would work trade shows and things like that just to have something to do. Because sometimes I would have 10 to 14 days at home. And that's really too long for me just to sit around and not make money and not do anything. So I really wanted to stay active. So anyway, a local agency would send me to be a trade show worker. And it was a really fun time in my life. And I learned so much about all these different types of companies. I would represent software companies and just anything you can imagine. Well, I go to this interview and I didn't think anything of it. It was in Las Colinas. Those of you that are local know that there's a lot of office buildings over there. There's no red flags of any kind. And plus the agency that sends me, they vet everything. They've never had any trouble. They've been around for decades. I think that place opened in the 60s and there's never been any trouble. So I went in there with a huge amount of confidence and it never crossed my mind that I might be in danger. Well, I go in there and I check in and there's a woman at a receptionist desk and she says, "Hi, may I help you?" and all that stuff. And I said, "Oh, yes, I'm here to see so-and-so." She's like, "Oh, great, he's in there." So she goes and gets him. And I kind of could tell it's one of those places where you where the people are renting, like it wasn't his receptionist
Yeah.
necessarily. It was like it's like you rent space at this office and then the
Yeah.
receptionist just kind of comes with it.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. I've been to some places like that.
Yeah. And I don't know how I caught on to that, but it just seemed like it because she didn't really seem to know who he was. I guess that's what it was. So anyway, I go into the office and he has like boxes sitting around and stuff. And he said, "Oh, pardon the mess. I'm just moving in." I said, "Oh, that's no problem, you know." So he starts talking to me, and it was supposed to be for a health and beauty expo. And, I was really excited. That sounded like a lot of fun. And I was sitting there in my interview suit. It's like a black pencil skirt and black jacket, some kind of shirt under it, whatever. And so I'm sitting there and he goes, "Well, here's what it is." He goes, I invented a new kind of pedicure machine. And he explained how it works. And he said, "I don't have the prototype here, but I'll definitely have several of them at the show." And he said, "I want you girls, instead of talking to the public, trying to get people in the booth, trying to sell my product," he said, "I would really like for you guys to be giving each other pedicures on the platform. And so people come up and they can actually see the pedicure thing." And I thought, well, that's fine, because sometimes the stuff we would do was more like acting, than selling. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
sometimes they would want us to do stuff like that. All right. So I said,
Yeah.
okay,
Makes
that
sense.
didn't send up any red flags, nothing. I'm fine. Right.
Right.
So then he goes, "Well, let me just show you what I want you to do. It's easier to show you than to tell you." And I said, "Okay." He goes, just put your foot in my lap." So I was like, okay. And I put my foot in his lap. I kicked my shoe off and put my foot in his lap. Of course, I'm sitting kind of stiff because I'm wearing a skirt, trying to
Yeah.
be modest. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, so he starts rubbing my foot and he goes, "I just want you gals to just do this." And he starts rubbing my foot and he's kind of like getting into it. He looked a little too happy about it.
Yeah.
And I was just, so right then was the first I felt like something was off. And I looked around the
My
room.
gosh.
Yeah. And I just sort of did a calculation of everything. And I thought, I don't even know if this guy has anything to do with pedicure places, right? Or
Right.
pedicure machines. So I gently pulled my foot back down and said, "That's really great." And I said, "Thank you so much for your time." And I just tried to get out of there. I literally ran at top speed. I went down the elevator, ran, I jumped in my car, locked the doors, and I called the lady who sent me on it, the agent. And I was starting to launch into my story. She goes, "No, no, no, don't say anything." She goes, "I just talked to the girls that went before you." She goes, "I'm so sorry." She goes, "I couldn't get a hold of you. It was too late. We did the research. There is no health and beauty expo even coming up, and he's not even
Oh
a real
my.
company." He was just a guy with a foot fetish that was thinking, "I can like touch chicks' feet all day." And he just had us lined up appointments all day long. I mean, it's pretty
That is
brilliant,
the
actually.
most bizarre thing. Every time you tell me that story, it just blows me away. I'm just like,
I
what?
mean, he gets points for, innovation there, but I mean, seriously, it was the weirdest thing. It's probably the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me
What?
until about 18 months later. I'm on a date with my
That's
husband.
bizarre.
We weren't even engaged yet. Mike and I were just like on a date. And if you're local to Dallas, there's a movie theater called the Grand Theater. And this is kind of when it was new and it had stadium seating, which, that's, the theaters are super nice now, but this is when um, stadium seating was kind of a new concept. That makes me sound like I'm 1,000 years old. I don't mean it that way, but it was a big deal that this theater was built this certain way. And it wasn't just that the seats graduate up like they do in older theaters, but they were like, the severe stairs where you definitely will not have anyone's head in front of you no matter how tall they are.
Right.
So anyway, we go to the Grand Theater and we're all excited and we're seeing a movie. Had George Clooney in it. We were just pumped, right? So I sat down and Mike loves movies. So he was all excited. So he gets up, we get our seats and decide we're going to sit. I sat on the aisle. I always sit on the aisle because if I drink anything, I'll have to get up and go to the bathroom several times. So I always know to get on the aisle so I don't have to walk past a lot of people. So I'm sitting there with my right leg crossed. I remember this, into the aisle. I'm on my left-hand side. That's the end of the aisle. And
Hmm.
Mike pops up to go get popcorn or something and go to the bathroom. So I'm just sitting there and I feel something on my foot. But I'm like, that's a weird sensation. It felt kind of wet, but I didn't know what it was. So I just jerked my foot and assumed that it was just something weird. It was really dark in there. The previews were already on. So anyway, I just moved my foot and I thought that was weird, but I never did figure out what it was. So I just thought that was one and done, right? So Mike comes back and sits next to me, and I stuck my foot back over there because I crossed my leg, and I felt it again, only this time it was unmistakable. The dude sitting in front of me was sucking on my feet. He was sucking my toes, like big time.
That is another bizarre. I mean, just like, wow. Like, I don't even have words.
I know. I jumped. I leapt on top of Mike. Like I jumped. I mean, I'm surprised I didn't kill him. I mean, I just jumped up and flew over into his seat. He was like, "What's going on?" And I said, "That guy." And so I was trying to tell him. And mind you, it's the theater. The previews are loud. The guy gets up and runs out of the theater, and he never comes back. And I was just stunned. Mike was stunned, and we just were in stunned silence, and we tried to watch the movie, but we thought about telling the police, but we were just stunned. I mean,
Yeah.
and he never came back. I kept waiting. I was like, if he comes back, we're gonna tell the police, but nothing. He never came back. And I remember seeing his face and his feet, and that's how severe the stadium seating was, is that his head was at my foot level. So when he turned to the left, he could go to town sucking my foot. And so those are my two really weird foot fetish stories. So there are people out there with foot fetishes, and there's apparently people out there who will just take your feet. They won't even ask your permission. They will
Oh my
just molest
gosh.
your feet. And that happened to me twice in my life, and that's just bizarre. So
It is bizarre. It's like, you've always, I mean, I'm sure most people have heard of it, but I don't think, I say I don't think that people know that that's such a big thing, for some weird people. And
right.
maybe not everybody's weird that has a foot fetish, but there are a lot of people that have foot fetishes that are weird. Obviously, Crystal just told us two stories about two strange people that decided to do whatever they wanted.
And those stories happened. Those occurrences were like 18 months apart from each other.
That is so crazy.
Yeah,
Like,
that was shortly before Mike and I got engaged. So anyway, but we have another foot fetish story, and it's really recent. And Renee, this is a really good one. This happened to Renee. So go ahead.
So I know that we've talked about what we do before, me and you on one of our podcasts that we did. But as a lot of people know, I have a sheets business, and I'm on social media a lot. So I get a lot of messages. I mean, a lot of messages. And so when I'm going through them, I go through them really fast. I just click on them, see what they say, and I respond because there's so many. And so one day I get a message, and I read it, and I literally had to read it twice. I was like, wait, what? What did that say? So the first, funny. I know, it's so, I remember I sent this to you. I was like, what is this? So the first message that I get was in June of 2019. And I get a message from a man, and he says, would you let a guy smell your feet after a long day in shoes if he had asked and offered or paid to? So I just assumed it was a joke. So I responded back and said, and this is funny, and everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I just thought it was a joke, Everybody always says I'm too serious. So I said, what's the rate for something like that? I've never heard of it. And he never replied. Okay. And this was like the next day when I replied. So, I just let it go, whatever. I guess it was a joke, and he didn't reply. So, I never even went back and looked at it. I actually forgot about it. So in March of this year, I got another message from him, and this one was way more detailed. He said, hang on. Are you there?
Oh yeah, I'm waiting for you to read it. This one's really good.
I thought I lost you.
No, I'm here.
So it says, being playful and kinky, may I ask which activity would interest you more? Tying a guy up and forcing him to smell your feet after a long day in the shoes of your choice, or tying a guy to a chair and suffocating him until he's
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. I mean, it's so hard to read. Or tying a guy to a chair and suffocating him until he is starting to struggle for air and about to panic. Or, there's more, would you do both since he was tied and couldn't stop you?
That is so weird. But
And
see,
that's
what
when
I
I
was laughing during that second one, the smothering one, I thought that they wanted you to smother them with their feet. I was remembering that wrong.
Oh, yeah, no.
So that's a separate issue then. He wants to be
He's the one
smothered.
that's wanting to come close to death over smelling feet, I guess. But so I read this and I thought, okay, so this isn't a joke because now he's gotten deeper into the details of what it is he wants to do. And I looked up this person, and of course I won't share it. And we're going to post it on our page with the podcast. And I've blocked out his profile looking thing or whatever. But I looked him up, and he's probably around anywhere between 60 and 70 years old. And I didn't respond. And so he sends me a question mark 3 times. And then he sends me a thumbs up. So, and I don't know this person.
Weird.
Nor, from what I can tell, I've never done business with him. He is in a city where I've done business before. So I'm not 100% sure that I didn't do business with him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I did, and he messaged me. I don't know.
Wow.
And it was the first time he messaged me. It was not long after because I researched it. It was not long after we had been in the city where he lives.
Ooh.
But anyway, so it's really spooky. And then I started thinking, oh my gosh, is this something, I don't know. I just didn't realize that it was such a, you know what I'm saying?
What I was thinking is who would like to smother him would be his wife. Didn't he have a woman?
That's another thing I forgot to say, that you can clearly tell this man is married because his Facebook has a picture of him and his wife. And so I just kind of looked at his Facebook, and it's weird because it's totally open. And I mean, you can tell it's real because it's full of, excuse me, it's full of pictures of probably grandkids and his kids and, him talking to friends from work and all kinds of stuff. And I just thought it was super bizarre. I thought, man, this guy is just not very smart, to be doing that. Because
if she found out about that, she'd be like, oh, I'll strangle you. All right, buddy. I can't believe he's contacting women and saying that weird stuff to just random people. And
I know, because I'm obviously random because we've never messaged each other before. Like I said, unless he's bought from us when we were traveling.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, after that, I thought, okay, so I'm not going to reply to this guy because he's obviously serious. I thought it was just like a joke, but it's definitely not a joke. Apparently, really, because I mean, he even you didn't respond. And what's weird is last time I responded, he didn't, but maybe somebody took him up on another one and he got his fill of smelling feet, I guess. I don't know.
That's so crazy. I would love to know if that ever works for him. I mean, does he ever get someone that goes, yeah, okay.
Well, the thing is that, and I know that most of the people, obviously, that are going to be listening to our podcast are going to be true crime buffs. So more than likely, they're going to understand, than people who don't listen to it. So, but anyway, I've always been a true crime buff fan, whatever you want to call it. And I've always wanted to entertain asking, and I know it's not something that you could do easily, but I've always wanted to ask people that do things like this, why do you do what you do? I want to know. I know it probably not going to make sense. You know what I'm saying? You want to know, why did you do this? Why didn't you make a better choice or whatever? And that would be something I would want to ask him, what is it about smelling feet after a long day that makes you happy? I can't even imagine how that would be something that would excite somebody.
Well, and that's a very interesting thing you bring up about him wanting smelly feet, because I remember thinking I had gotten my feet freshly pedicured for my date with Mike. And so I thought that was what made my foot attractive to this weirdo sitting in front of me. But apparently your guy wants the opposite.
And that's the most bizarre part about it. I've never, when I think of foot fetish, and before this happened, and in my past, just hearing foot fetish, my thinking was it was a person who liked pretty feet. They were well manicured, your toenails were painted, you just had pretty feet. But apparently that's not the case. That doesn't really necessarily have to be pretty. They just like feet. Because after us talking about this, I did a little bit of research. You know me, I love to do my research.
Right.
And so I come up with, I looked it up first of all, and there's a couple of words that I didn't know existed. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but there's a word that it makes sense, but foot fetishism.
Yeah.
I've never heard that. And then another word is foot. Okay, this wouldn't be correct saying it with foot, but another word is fetishized. I was like, what?
So basically, they're just sort of conjugating the word fetish.
Yes,
as though it were a verb. You're fetishized.
It's just weird that they even took that word and did with it. But so in my research, I found a couple of different people who were serial killers and had foot fetishes.
Oh, creepy.
Yeah, I know. One of them was named Jerry Brudos. He was a serial murderer and a necrophiliac. He was called the lust killer and also the shoe fetish slayer.
Huh.
He became fascinated with high heels at the age of 5. And they consider people with shoe fetishes the same as foot fetishes because it kind of goes together, obviously.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
He murdered 4 women in Oregon. He killed a woman, and you're going to think this last name is interesting. He killed a woman by the name of Linda Slauson. I had a hard time saying that.
So it's my last name with an S.
Exactly.
Yeah.
January 26th of 1968, he murdered her. And after he did that, he cut off her foot to use as a display for the high heels that he stole from other women he murdered.
Gross.
Yeah, very weird. Then there's another one by the name of Dayton Leroy Rogers. He murdered 6 women, and he removed all of his victims' feet.
Ew.
This one is going to be one you're familiar with, I know. His name is Ted Bundy.
Oh, yeah.
His dream was to purchase unlimited pairs of socks and underwear. He used stolen credit cards to buy 3 to 4 dozen pairs of socks at a time. He felt deprived of underwear. As a child, and he feels incredibly close to his feet, which that's weird. He said, "My feet are probably the most attractive feet you will ever see." I thought that was interesting. That
Ted Bundy said that?
Yes.
What a weirdo.
Yeah, he did. And there are, when I was looking this stuff up, because I don't know, I just like to look things up. It's just the way I am. And in looking it up, you just Google foot fetish. Well, the first thing that comes up is a website called footfetishmatch.com. So apparently there's a website where women can go looking for men who have foot fetishes, and they can pay them to do whatever, I guess, like smell their feet or whatever they do.
When that guy first messaged, that just reminds me, when that guy first messaged you, I watched a YouTube video. Remember this? This has been several months ago, but it was a young woman who said that she decided to just try that. And so she got a webcam, and she would, for payment, I guess probably through a website like what you're talking about, and she made like a ton of money that week because, people with foot fetishes were paying to see her feet, and they would have like special requests, like they wanted to see her feet in certain positions. This is just feet, okay? No other body parts.
Right.
They want to see her feet pointed. Some guy wanted to see her feet with red toenail polish. And these guys were satisfied just with feet pictures, or I think in some cases she did video, and she would charge accordingly. Like if it was a video with several different poses, that cost you more. And then
wow,
you made a lot of, remember I was telling you that, and we were laughing. We're like, well, maybe we need to go out and get a pedicure right now.
Yeah.
Wrong business.
I totally remember that. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
That's so funny that you bring that up again, because I'd kind of forgotten about that conversation until you said that.
I just didn't realize there were so many websites. Well, I mean, first of all, like we said before, I didn't realize that a foot fetish was something of that nature. I didn't know that it involved anything with smelly feet. I just assumed.
No, I assumed it was just feet too. Yeah.
Pretty
clean feet.
Yeah, because that's just what you think that someone wants to see. I mean, in my wildest dreams, I never thought that having smelly feet. I mean, this guy kept saying after a long day in your shoes, that was his thing. And I don't know. I don't get all that. But then I just was blown away by all these these sites, and of course I didn't click on them because I figured it would start sending me, you know how it does when you click on anything, it starts sending you stuff. I mean, because they've been sending my husband, I can't tell you how many times they have sent him, we hear that you want to start school, and we want to get you, going in college and all this. And he's like, I do not want to go to college. It's because he clicked on something on accident. So I thought,
Right.
I am not going to click on those because they're going to be sending me foot fetish crap forever.
Oh my gosh, that's
So I
crazy.
made sure I didn't, but it was just, and there's
That
a
is
couple.
hilarious.
Oh, I know. There's a couple of different words they use for it too. Foot fetish, foot fetishism, foot partialism, and foot worshiping.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I've heard those terms. What's really funny though is that there's probably a lot of people listening to our podcast that they're like thinking that we're really naive because apparently foot fetishism is fairly not super unpopular. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's popular, but it's definitely not unpopular. There seems to be a huge market for it, especially watching that YouTube video of that girl who experimented, by selling pictures and video of her feet. She made a ton of money off of that. So there's definitely a market out there. It's just something that I never think of. I mean, until my feet got attacked by strangers, of course, but up until then, I had never thought about foot fetishism. So there it is.
Me either. That it's just like a whole new world for me. It's like somebody just said, told me something, and I'm like, where have I been all these years? I had no idea that this was a thing, and I definitely didn't know that it involved the different aspects of it. I just, yeah.
Well, and here's something else that I thought of like almost years later is that same agency that sent me on those trade show jobs.
Uh-huh.
They also sent me on shoe modeling jobs because I just by coincidence happened to have the size shoe that companies use for their ads, but also for like sizing, size 6. Some companies were 6.5, some were 6. My arches fell when I got pregnant with my first child, and then I was a 7 from then on out. But at the time, I wore that size. So they're like, hey, could you do this too? So it's really creepy to think that that guy had probably seen on my resume that I did some shoe stuff, and maybe that made him want to call me in. But he also called in other girls that didn't. So, but anyway, that was super creepy. I'm glad we got to get our foot fetish stories off of our chests because we've both been inappropriately approached for our feet.
And, I know, it's just
without
so
any
bizarre. I know. I guess the guy that messaged me, I guess his wife wants nothing to do with that, or maybe maybe he doesn't even ask her, because as we see, a lot of these creepy people have wives and families that know nothing of their significant other weird habits and things that they do. So who knows?
Exactly. And what was that man's wife? What would she think if you like sent her screenshots and messengers? She would just be like, what?
I know.
So,
I know.
imagine how shocking that would be if my husband was inboxing women for weird stuff like that. I wouldn't even know what to do with that.
I know. It would definitely be a game changer.
Yeah. That's for sure. Okay, so we were going to talk about obviously our case, which is the Missy Bevers case. And, Renee and I were preparing for this episode, and we realized that there's just really not been that much that's happened in the case since we've last reported. Actually, in a long time, we haven't heard any updates from MPD, which is Midlothian Police Department. However, we did realize there was something we hadn't really covered, and that's it gets a lot of, we don't know if law enforcement is entertaining this concept, but we found that in our discussion groups, in YouTube comments, in Dallas Morning News article comments, anywhere you can discuss this case, we have noticed that occasionally someone will bring up the idea that perhaps this perpetrator who killed Missy in the church early that Monday morning might not have been there to kill her. He might have been in there, he or she might have been in there for some other reason, like that they were upset with something to do with the church, or they just wanted to be somewhere to do some cosplay. And for those of you who don't know what cosplay is, it's when people like to dress up as a character and really take it seriously, and they really get into it. So apparently some people think that the perpetrator might have wanted to dress up as a cop, as a SWAT member, and was just having a big old time in there, and Missy came in and interrupted him, and he just freaked out and killed her. That's one of them. Renee, am I missing anything? It's sort of Just that either they were mad at the
No.
church, or they were just having fun vandalizing, or they were looking for things to steal. Is that
Or
about it?
a robbery gone wrong. That
Yeah,
one's been mentioned more times than I could count.
right.
Yeah, so that's another one. Um, so, okay, so let's kind of walk through one of them and just kind of entertain it, if you will.
Okay.
Let's just entertain the cosplay one where the person is just dressed up like something, whatever. I guess obviously they're dressed up as a cop, and they're there just to role play, I guess.
Yeah.
And so if a person is role playing, let's see. So wouldn't they be doing things like a cop does? I mean, obviously, a cop does walk around to check, kind of like security sometimes when they don't have, other pressing things to do. So they kind of would walk around and check things, and but this person's not doing that. They're breaking things, so that's completely opposite.
Oh, you're right. That's a really good point. Like if you were in cosplay to be a SWAT person, you'd be like kicking doors and going freeze, and holding up your
Yeah.
gun or something. Um, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be walking around and like breaking windows and trying to break in doors because that's the opposite of what a SWAT or police or anything like that does. So that would be completely against, they're not really, playing their part.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
right.
I don't know if
That's
that,
actually the first time I've really, really thought about that. You're so right. Because if you're pretending to be a cop and you're really into cosplay, or is it cosplay? I don't even know how you say it.
I don't know. I say cosplay. Who knows?
Who
Tomato,
knows?
tomato.
I think I went with cos because it was like costume, cos. I don't know. So anyway,
Yeah.
whatever you call that, yeah, you're right. They would be doing the opposite. They wouldn't be there like trying to break stuff. They would be in there protecting and serving. So
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Yeah. They would be like, so that, I don't know if I could, I kind of have to push that one to the side immediately for me. I mean, what about you? That one just doesn't fit.
Yeah, well, and also, you and I have talked about this many times, Renee, but it was pouring down rain and it was the middle of the night. I just can't imagine anyone being that committed to cosplay that's going to throw on a uniform and want to do that at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. That's just weird.
Yeah,
I
that
have a
really
hard
is weird.
time with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they could have picked. I mean, it's not like it was a urgent. Okay, so if they're not there to kill Missy, and they're there just to hang out, they know nothing about her coming. They're just going to go do this. I mean, why would they go, oh, it's pouring down rain. It's been raining for hours. Let me put on this costume, go out in the rain, break into this church, walk around, and do this role playing because I think it's really cool. And then, oh, somebody showed up. I mean, to me, none of it fits. I don't really understand how to make that fit because to me, you're not gonna do that when it's pouring down rain, like you said. That just doesn't fit.
Yeah, I would think if you wanted to do cosplay, or however it's pronounced, that you would do it. And isn't that something you do with others? Because I remember on Conan O'Brien many, many, many years ago, and I still watch this video on YouTube sometimes because it makes me laugh so hard. But it was it was the opening of one of the Star Wars movies. And there's these guys were outside dressed as the characters in Star Wars waiting to get in, I guess. I'm not really sure. But they were acting out scenes from the movie and stuff. I mean, they were having a good time together. It was like a community thing. I'm just having a hard time. And maybe our listeners might know someone who's into this and can help explain. But I've never heard of anybody doing cosplay by themselves, and especially in the middle. Why would you drive out to a church um, and park and go in and do that alone, and break into a church to do that in the middle of the night? Why wouldn't you do cosplay in a little bit safer environment and not have to do breaking and entering?
Sorry that I got you off of the wrong start. I think you're right. It's cosplay. I've just heard it said cosplay before, so I think that you're right because it says it's short for costume play. So I think you're right on that.
Oh,
So
okay. Who knows?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think I've ever heard anyone say it out loud, oddly.
Yeah, I
Um,
have before, but apparently they must have said it wrong. But anyway, I just
that's okay.
I
But
just looked it up and that's what it says.
I was just gonna say I don't really know. Like maybe someone does know someone that wants to do that by themselves, but I would think driving to a very quiet place that you know no one's gonna be there to do cosplay, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, it says here that cosplayers do more than simply dress like their favorite characters, though. To express their creative side and show depth of their fandom, they also behave and speak like their characters, sometimes acting out their favorite scenes with their friends. I didn't
That's
see.
that Star Wars thing I saw.
Yeah, and this is, to me, this person's not doing that. They're not
No, not at all.
acting. They're literally just walking around. To me, they're waiting.
Oh yeah.
They're like, like I gotta waste this time because she's not here yet.
Yeah, they
Just
look,
get a
I
few
mean, they
later.
look very much like they're lying in wait. I mean,
Yeah.
they're waiting for Missy to arrive, and I feel like they're just walking around burning off nervous energy, picking at some locks, messing with some stuff.
and
But
it and it talks about superheroes and characters from video games, comic books, or movies. I mean, I guess a cop could be in one of those. So that's the only part of it that would fit, but the rest of it wouldn't, because they didn't pull out a gun, and a gun is going to be an integral part of being a police officer, especially if you're playing out a part. I don't
well,
think that they're going to pull out a
and
hammer.
we have a friend from the from our discussion groups. His name is Joel. Hi, Joel, and he thinks that the cosplay is from a video game. So that's a possibility. Um,
Except
you
for,
know,
don't they normally shoot guns?
oh yeah, that's true. I don't know, but yeah, this video game features a security guard.
I mean, but a security guard. Okay, so I'm trying to walk myself through this. So this person is obsessed with video games, and they like, they want to be a police officer, so they want to play that part. But then they have a hammer in their hand, and that just doesn't fit.
Oh no, I totally get where you're coming from. I just I just a video game is just another example of something where you would want to imitate a character, I guess, if you were really into the video game. So let's see. Okay, so moving on from the concept of cosplay, we have the robbery gone wrong concept that people debate about. And what do you think about that one, Renee?
Okay, so first off, if someone is going to break and enter and then rob a place, um, the things that would be taken from a church obviously there are big things that could be taken from a church, but obviously if you were going to take big things, you wouldn't do it by yourself. So this person was alone. So if they're going to take things, let's see. I know a lot of people have mentioned the tithes from the service on Sunday. They've talked about that. Okay, so that would be something small, but you would still have to have something to put it in, because if there's a lot of people that go to this church, there's going to be a lot of bills and maybe even change, things like that. Maybe it's just a bunch of envelopes, I'm not sure. But still, you would have to have something to put it in. This person had nothing. They didn't have a bag,
Yeah, good
they didn't
point.
have a box, they didn't have anything to put items in to steal.
Yeah.
So that's my first question is, if it's a robbery gone wrong, they had a lot of time. 30 minutes is a lot of time, because a lot of times when people are breaking in and taking things, they're taking them in, minutes, seconds,
Yeah.
whatever, maybe 5 minutes at the most. They're just going to grab a bunch of stuff and leave. And this person didn't grab anything at any point in time.
Well, and I rewatched that HLN show the other day, and I know I plug that show a lot, and I swear we have no affiliation to HLN or this show, but it was
Yeah,
just a really good synopsis. Yeah, it's just a really good synopsis, and it's HLN, and the series is called Crime, Lies, and Video, and the one about the Missy Bevers case is the fourth episode. Well, I watched it again night before last, and Brandon Beavers, her husband, made a good point. He said, you know, he didn't even take the ring off her finger. If the
yep.
perpetrator wanted to steal things of value, I mean, the perp could have just slipped that right off her finger, and her ring was still on.
Yeah.
Nothing
And
of
that
value was missing.
Nothing. And so, and it amazes me with the police officers saying that over and over, nothing of value was taken. Why did people keep trying to put it? And I'm not saying that I know, because obviously I don't know for a fact, but I just don't see how anybody can entertain that when there was nothing taken. It just doesn't fit to me.
And then we have people who have tried to argue that it looks like the perpetrator picked up a white object and that counts as being taken, but we don't even know if that was anything of value, and we're not even 100% sure that the perpetrator found that there. That might have come out of his or her vest or whatever that they had on. So
Exactly.
I'm not really convinced about picking up that white object having any meaning, because we don't even know what that is.
I mean, I think in my mind that it would be something that would be heavy that they could use to break something if something else they had didn't work. That's what
Yeah,
I thought.
yeah, good point. Okay, so what was the other theory that makes it? Oh, I guess someone who was okay. The other theory that I've heard, and let me know if I'm leaving any theories out, but the other one is someone was angry with the church. We've heard different versions of this, but somebody was just upset with something that Creekside Church had done, a decision they made, who knows, and it affected this person in a way that made them want to break into the church and just kind of raise some Cain and tear up the church, and they were angry, and then Missy came in and interrupted, and they panicked and killed her. Here's the way I look at it: is if you decide that you're so angry at the place you want to get in there and vandalize it, I would think you would get in there and get started ASAP. You would start tearing stuff up. You wouldn't just sort of casually meander around for half an hour on camera, barely. I mean, the perpetrators making these really like lame attempts at vandalism. I would think if you were really angry at the church, you'd go in there with a baseball bat and just start going to town and tearing things up.
Right.
And then you'd want to get out of there real quick so you wouldn't be caught. Meandering around that way, the way the perpetrator's walking slowly for, I believe they said, a full 28 minutes before Missy arrives, that's a half an hour. You can do a lot of damage and be in and out of there and gone way before a half an hour is over.
Yeah. And what about like graffiti? They could also do that. A lot of people, like whenever they
Yeah.
have something against somebody, they want that group or the people or the congregation, whatever you want to call it, to know what they're mad about, even though, they won't know who particularly. Obviously they don't want the people to know who it is, but they can still write messages to them with spray paint or whatever, and that wasn't even done. So
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, and also back to the robbery gone wrong. You were talking about they didn't have a bag and they didn't even take anything. Also, like, why would you dress up in that gear that's kind of hard to move in? I mean, most
Yeah.
people would struggle. Do you remember in the HLN show? I had kind of forgotten about this. I'm glad I watched it again night before last because a couple of things popped out at me that I'd forgotten. Dr. Nuremberg, the forensic podiatrist who worked on this case, he said that he put on the equipment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he
I missed
donned.
that.
Yeah, he put on that type of tactical gear. Obviously, not the gear used in the murder that was never recovered, but that he put on that gear to see how it would affect, and he said it made him move a little more slowly, a little, more labored. So why would you in a you call them like a crash and grab, like if you're going to break in somewhere and try to steal stuff and get out without getting in trouble and getting caught, why would you put on gear that actually hinders the way you move because it's so heavy and constricting? SWAT gear, is made to protect those people, the men and women who are on SWAT teams, and they're breaking down doors and they're potentially getting in face to face with really bad people with weapons. That gear is there to protect you. So
Right.
why would you don that outfit? Now I understand it does make the cameras not able to identify you. That's good. But I think if I was like, okay, I've got to go in somewhere and grab some stuff and leave, and there's cameras in there, so I have to conceal myself, I would probably put on a ski hat, a ski mask, and maybe a black turtleneck, and some black pants, something just to try not to show up too much. and just run in and out. I mean, I can't imagine putting on that type of garb just to go in there and look for stuff to steal. And then, of course, they don't actually even steal anything. And also, I had heard, I don't know if we heard this from someone official or if it was speculation, it's been so long, but I've heard several times people saying, well, there wasn't even money there anyway. They deposit it, they take it that night. They don't leave it in the church. And I don't know if that's
See, I can imagine that that's true, because that would be like, that would be like when I went to beauty school. It was a really long day, and so you just had to take whatever kind of job you could get after it just to get it. So I worked at Pizza Hut, and I know that they would take the deposit several times a day for that specific reason. I don't think that they would just take the money and just like, oh, we'll just wait till Monday. They probably take it right then, either with them and deposit it on their way to work on Monday, or
right.
they, take it and deposit it then. I just can't imagine them leaving, because we don't know how many thousands of dollars that is.
And I think I've heard it right. And I think I've heard of churches actually taking them to drop boxes that day, like after service.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And even if they did leave it in the church until, let's say, Monday when the office people come in, I would assume it's in a safe that you can't get into,
Yeah.
So there's just the idea that the perpetrator was there to rob the place. And that just has never worked for me. I've just tried so hard to make that make sense, and I just can't.
Yeah, I can't either. Like I said, I've tried to, because when people say, different theories, I'll listen and I'll be like, huh, but every time it just comes right back to me and tells my mind just tells me that that doesn't fit.
Right.
It doesn't, and we haven't even gotten into the associating these with the murder. We haven't even made it that far. We've only made it as far as to actually what, you know what I'm saying? We haven't even made it as far as to even discuss it as fitting into the murder. So to me, that definitely kicks those out. The other one that people mention a lot is just a random act. They were and I don't really know. I guess that would still fit in with a random act. They were angry with the church, or a random act of just robbery gone wrong. I mean, I guess that would all fit into there, but I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know how to make any of those fit. And I don't mind entertaining anything, because anything is possible. To me, it's hard to say that it was random, because if a person was there, so if we get past the part of any of these, let's just say we just entertain it. Okay, so it was definitely robbery. They were there to rob the place, and they were attempting to rob. Well, they weren't attempting, but they were walking around. I guess at some point they were going to rob the place, and for 30 minutes, and then Missy comes in, and then they're like, oh my gosh, this woman just walked in. Well, now the church is really big, and they could run the other direction. They have plenty of places they could go, but they run right towards her, and they just start bludgeoning her to death, and in a very personal way. But it's not personal because they don't know her, nor they've never met her. They didn't even know she was going to show up. See, that doesn't even fit.
So how do you get to that level of rage just because someone interrupted either your cosplay, or you trying to vandalize and not doing a very good job of it, or trying to steal stuff but not actually taking anything? Like, how would any of those activities warrant you freaking, not that anything warrants it, but you know what I'm saying? If you're really not there to kill her, how do you go from 0 to 60 like that? I would think that if somebody walked in and interrupted you, you would hightail it out the back door and jump in your car and leave, because all the information we have points to the fact that the perpetrator obviously parked on the opposite side of the building, because Missy didn't have any reason to think anything was off that morning. So that car, that small dark SUV that was seen leaving the scene of the crime, must have been parked on the opposite side. So why wouldn't they just hightail it out the back when they heard someone come in and drive off? Why expose yourself to a potential capital murder case when you don't have to?
Yeah, and people that typically do these things, these cosplay robberies, vandalism, things like that, those aren't typically people that, you don't go from vandalizing something to instant bludgeoning murder. Those don't even, I'm not saying that people that do those things don't eventually get there. I think they usually work their way up, because they have to graduate, to each different, thing. I know that there's several serial killers that I've read about that, they started out, doing this, and then they started out doing that, and, like killing small animals, and then, they worked their way up. They didn't just go from
Yeah.
stealing credit cards or, whatever to straight to murder.
Right.
So,
And I see, and all three of these are more like nuisance crimes, that we,
right.
it's, big, they're nuisance crimes, like tearing up a little bit of a church or whatever. It's just hard to see how that could escalate to this brutal murder that seemed very personal. So, I mean, her
Right.
murder doesn't make sense at all, no matter how you look at it. But I'm really struggled to make it make any kind of sense under these three scenarios that we discussed, or four, I guess. So,
And just because her murder hasn't been solved and no one has been arrested, and at this time it seems like a cold case, or they don't really have, anybody, another suspect in mind or whatever, that doesn't mean that you instantly, in my mind, you don't instantly just take one of these and go, well, it has to be one of these then because it hasn't been solved. To me, the other possibilities are still possibilities. People get away with murder all the time. I mean, they typically make a mistake. There's some mistake that has been made somewhere, just somebody hasn't found it yet, or someone hasn't spoken, somebody is afraid to
yeah.
talk. There's all kinds of reasons why murders aren't solved, but it doesn't mean it's because it's just random. It's definitely got to be random because it hasn't been solved yet. That's just my thinking.
Yeah. We have seen those comments from people where they say, well, since it's been 4 years, it's leading us to believe that it must be someone that didn't have any ties to Missy and that this was random. But I don't see it that way. I think that law enforcement is having a very difficult time pinning this on someone. This someone's a bit elusive. I think that's my kind of point of view. Although, of course, I don't know who killed Missy, but I just tend to lean that direction that they do know who did it. They just can't seem to get this is a capital murder case, okay? They can only do this once, and they know that. And once they make the arrest, because I've had people say, well, why don't they just arrest the person and then start building the case? Once you make the arrest, the clock starts ticking, I mean,
Right.
they really need to have it together pretty well before the arrest. Not, 100%, of course, but they have to have something really good. So, point being is, I agree with you. I have a hard time making those scenarios work. I don't think that this was just a last minute decision because the person was surprised that she showed up. I think that perpetrator was in that church for the strict reason to wait for her to arrive.
Yeah, I mean, these petty crimes that people are referring to, I just don't see people going from petty crimes to murder like we were talking about, and it just doesn't fit to me. So,
But hey, Renee and I will be the first to say we're always prepared to be wrong. And
yep.
if this case gets solved and it ends up being something random like this, that's great. I just want this person put away.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely talk about that because that will be something that will be, new, something that I've
Yeah.
never heard of. Of course, there's plenty of things we haven't never heard of, so we're willing to,
Yeah.
I mean, we wanted to at least acknowledge them and theorize about them, and I don't know. That's just kind of the way my brain works when I'm thinking about those things, and it just didn't fit to me. So.
No, I completely agree. So yeah, so we've got those ideas of how the perpetrator wound up in that church in the middle of the night in the pouring rain, dressed up in tactical police gear. And if any of our listeners is really dedicated and devoted to the idea that that person was not there for Missy, please share your thoughts with us because we are very open-minded to it. I know we just got through saying neither one of us thinks that's the case, but our minds could be changed, with the right information. We just haven't seen anything yet. Neither one of us. I think I can speak for you too, Renee. We haven't seen anything that has made us go, okay, yeah, I could see that. So,
And the thing is that, to me, oh gosh, and I think you've talked about this before as well. If we were closer and you said, hey, let's go work out or whatever, and I'm going to be like, it's pouring down rain. I don't want to fight getting to the car, fight getting out of the car, fight running to the building, go in there and you're soaking wet, and then you got to try to dry off, and then you got to work out, and then you got to come out and fight it again. Like, I'm just going to tell you no. Or if somebody says, hey, go to the grocery store and get, a couple of pizzas or, Dr. Pepper, I'm going to be like, no, it's pouring down rain and it's going to be a hassle too. Even with an umbrella, you're still going to get soaking wet.
Yeah,
so
you and I talked about that. We talked about that on the phone last night. I was like, I don't even want to go to Kroger when it's pouring down rain.
Exactly. So
yeah,
for them to fight the rain, number one, they wanted to be there. I mean, they wanted to be there, and I don't see them wanting to be there to cosplay, because they could have waited till the next day to do that, and it wouldn't have been raining.
You're right. There's
I'll just wait till tomorrow.
There's absolutely no urgency to do
they got the forecast. It's not always right, but it does kind of give you a little bit of help, to kind of like plan things better.
Right.
And then the robbery, I mean, the same thing. Like, are you going to really? I mean, I don't know. That's just my thinking.
Yeah, I think all the evidence that we have so far points to that person was on a mission, and they were there to get Missy. Unfortunately,
they were there to get Missy. They knew she was there. They knew she was coming, and they waited. They were waiting, and maybe they're a little meandering. I like that word. You started saying that, and I copied you because I like it. So they were, because it's meandering. They were meandering around the church, and maybe part of that was because that outfit was heavy, but regardless, they were still walking around like, well, let me just walk around these rooms and just look around. I mean, nobody wants to just stand there, so I just walk around looking, breaking in stuff. Maybe they were trying to make it look like it was broken into so that they would be like, oh, I'm here, I got this. I don't know.
Yeah Very strange. Anyway, it's just a weird case. We've said that over and over, but it is just a bizarre case, and we're just having a really hard time putting anyone in that church. And really, I think that's the key to this case. Law enforcement is going to have to figure out a way to put the perpetrator that did this in the church and be able to prove that they were there. That's going to be tough, because they're covered from head to toe.
The last time the police talked about this case, which they didn't talk about it this year, we've talked about that, but they did talk about it last year, and they said that they believe the way they are going to solve this case is by somebody coming forward. And I know that it can be, and I say I know, I don't know, but I can imagine that it would be hard to come forward to tell about a loved one that you think may have possibly done it, that somebody has been acting weird since it happened, that, you know what I mean? Or that you knew before it happened that they had an issue with Missy. But, this will drive you crazy, in my opinion, for the rest of your life. So as hard as it may be, I think it's going to be easier to come forward and at least get it off your chest and get it checked out, because if it's not them, then you'll feel better and everything will be fine. But if it is them, then you'll still feel better, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's up for debate, but you know what I'm saying? I think it would be better.
John Kelly, the criminal profiler we were fortunate to have on our program, and Joseph Scott Morgan as well. He's the death examiner and author we had on. They both made the point that, even if this ends up being like a serial killer type that killed Missy, even the worst psychopaths seem to care about their own families usually. Like, they don't want the embarrassment for their families. So, this perpetrator has to know that when they get arrested, it's going to be big news. It's going to cause a big splash. It's going to be a big fiasco. And it really would be better for this perpetrator to turn themselves in, because I'm saying themselves, I'm not because I think it's more than one, but because I don't know if it's a man or a woman,
right,
to turn him or herself in, and just come clean. This is not going to be pretty when they get arrested. It's going to be a big mess. Their family is going to see.
And they have the ability right now to take it upon themselves to make it better for their families, because it wouldn't, you know what I mean? They're not going to, because when something happens, there's going to be, cameras, people are going to be taking pictures, videos. It's going to be
on
so
the news.
bad.
It'll be on the worldwide news played over
And then
and over
people are
again.
going to be speculating about the person. They're going to be saying things about them, and then probably things about the family. But if they turn themselves in, I think that it would help so much to take a lot of that tension away. Not all of it, but
it would quiet that stuff down. And also, you know, there might be a better option for a plea deal of some kind if you can turn yourself in, perpetrators are
that's true.
listening. You know, you might have a better chance of maybe getting the death penalty off of the table if you turn yourself in. You might be able to work with the prosecutors. I don't know, but I think
Right.
there's a much better chance than if you make them chase you down.
Yep, that's true. And I think at some point, you know, because I think that people would, I mean, I think I would notice a difference in somebody. I mean, I think I'm pretty intuitive. And sometimes it takes me a while to pinpoint it, you know, when something like maybe one of my kids is, you know, acting different for a minute and I'm trying to figure out why. And then it finally dawns on me, oh, okay, so they're upset about XYZ or whatever. You know, you can usually pinpoint when people are acting different. And so
Yeah.
something to this magnitude, they're probably acting or probably, you know, have at times acted really different than they have in the past. And
I
you
hope
might,
so.
I do too. I really do. I hope that it just, and that, like I said, I can imagine that it's super hard, but they do have ways of calling in tips or whatever anonymously. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that hasn't always been an option. I think you
Mhm.
can text it. I think you can message it. I think, you know, Facebook. I mean, there's so many options
And you
that
can also call Crime Stoppers if you're just completely weirded out about calling the police station for some reason. And
right.
they keep it anonymous as well. So
Yeah. And it's not, you know, and I think that there are past, the police department's past wanting people to call and say, you know, oh, I think it's my neighbor that lives 3 doors down. I saw him walking to take out the trash the other day and he walks, you know, kind of the same as the person. I know they're not wanting that anymore. I mean, unless you can say, you know, I definitely saw him leave, you know, in a silver Nissan Altima or a brown SUV or dark blue SUV, whatever. I'm just dark
yeah,
SUV,
they
you know,
really don't. You're right. You're so
they
right.
don't.
They don't want us to speculate.
Yeah, unless you got specific information that you've seen them leaving and coming home, you know, before the murder and after the murder, then that they're not wanting that. They want, you know, real information.
They're wanting more than your opinion,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Because I remember Kevin Johnson saying they were getting a lot of opinions, and that was pretty distracting and exhausting and took up their resources when they needed to be getting facts. They needed some kind of evidence. You know, they don't
right.
want to know that you think that, yeah, like you think you saw someone walking like the perpetrator. It's like, okay, well, a lot of people have funny, limpy kind of walks. That's not helpful. We need to know if you can have a reason to think that that person was the one beyond
Yeah,
just the
exactly.
limp. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
do
got to
you
be
even
more.
know where they were that day? You
Yeah,
know?
right.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. People are trying to help. You know, they really want to help because they really truly want to see the perpetrator caught, just like we do. But I mean, you know, there's been plenty of people thrown under the bus that wouldn't have even, the police wouldn't have even dreamed of dragging them through the mud like that had someone not called and said, oh, I think it's so and so, blah, 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 you
Yeah.
know. So there was plenty of that.
Oh yeah, lots. So, did we have anything else we were going to cover on this episode? I'm trying to remember. I think we hit it all, didn't we?
I had something I was going to read to you earlier, but we're not talking about the foot fetish anymore. But it
No,
was,
go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
I totally missed it. I'm sorry I forgot
It's
to do
okay.
it
Go
in the
for it.
right. But I just found it interesting. You know me. I got to research and look for stuff, and I found this interesting story, and I thought it would be entertaining to listen to. But so there was a police officer. Wait, yeah, a police officer the title of the article says charges against Texas cop blamed on his foot fetish.
Mhm.
It's not long article, so I'm just going to kind of read through it a little bit because it's very interesting and funny. So give a Houston police officer a foot and well, apparently he'll take the other foot too. A
Mhm.
school district cop who supposedly has a foot fetish that came to light in his dealings with a female motorist is charged with official oppression for how he treated the woman. The Harris County District Attorney's Office said 26-year-old Patrick Quinn stopped the driver in August and said he found marijuana paraphernalia. Authorities say Quinn told the suspect he has a foot fetish and that he would release her if she let him smell her feet. According to CBS affiliate KHOU, prosecutors say the officer had pulled over the young woman as she was leaving a friend's place at the same apartment complex where Quinn lives. Quinn allegedly made the stop because of an expired sticker on her car and made her get in the back of his patrol car. The DA's office said because he's a school office police officer, Quinn shouldn't be making any traffic stops, especially at 3 a.m. Investigators say after Quinn searched the woman's car, he told her he wouldn't take her to jail if she showed him her feet or gave him her underwear. Seconds later, they say the officer abruptly told the woman, just forget about it. The next day, according to KHOU, the victims contacted authorities who reportedly took her back to the area where she was pulled over and found her insurance card on the ground. They say the fingerprints on it were traced back to Quinn. Authorities say they believe Officer Quinn may have made similar interactions with others. In a statement from the Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District, where Quinn was assigned, officials said they are appalled by the nature of the allegations against him and immediately placed him on administrative leave. Quinn is charged with 2 counts of official oppression. KHOU reports the district attorney's office is asking any other victims to come forward. Meanwhile, Quinn is free on $2,000 bond, $1,000 per foot. Isn't that funny?
Oh my gosh, that's so weird.
I just had to read. I meant to read it earlier, and I totally forgot. And I read it because for one, I thought it was interesting because about the smelling of the feet, and then the funny little things that they added in there: the $2,000 bond, $1,000 per foot, and then the beginning title of the whole article, which was charges against Texas cop blamed for his foot fetish.
That's so crazy. Well, and it also goes to show you that there are, just like there's weird other people in other lines of work, there's weird cops out there, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and you can tell he was probably, in the beginning stages of being a police officer. I mean, I guess, I don't know. It just sounds like it with he being just a school district police officer, but
yeah,
it was very weird. And he was 26, so he probably hadn't.
Oh yeah, he was young. That's just bizarre.
I know. I read that and I thought, oh, I want to read that. And I totally forgot about it. But yeah. And then
I'm glad you remembered before we went off the air.
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, so I enjoyed doing something a little different. And then of course doing some going through some theories that were different, I enjoyed that. It kind of gives us something to different perspective, but
yeah, that was the first time that we actually kind of walked through that really thoughtfully. We usually just kind of, dismiss it fairly quickly. So I'm glad we at least gave those theories a chance,
Yeah. Yeah, me too. It was definitely different. And I respect everybody's different opinions on things. And like we've said 1,000 times, we don't pretend to be right about anything because we definitely don't know any more than you do. We're just doing it from our knowledge and what we think. So it's just our opinions.
Yeah. And if the police don't know, if the FBI and everybody working on this case can't do it in 4 years, we're not going to do it in probably either. So we're aware of that, but we definitely are very interested in this case. And the more time goes on, the more resolute, it's almost like we're more resolved to see it solved for poor Missy and her family. Was there anything else we wanted to do on the podcast tonight?
I think that's all. Just remind everybody about our social media, and that's about it.
Yeah, please communicate with us if you have anything to say. And and I also wanted to mention we were very fortunate to be invited to be guests on Conversations of the Strange. And so did I say that right, Renee?
You did.
I'm getting tired and I'm afraid that I was messing it up. And I'm going to look it up real quick. Let's see here. And so it's a really nice guy named Don Smith that is the host of that show. And
he does a great job.
Yeah, I loved him. And he has all of his episodes. I've listened to several of his other episodes, not just ours. Ours just came out today. But they're all good. He's really good with people, good at interviewing. And it's called Conversations of the Strange. And you can look him up at Conversations of the Strange
on Facebook,
blogspot.com. And we did promote that on our social media if you want to refer back to it. and he can be found just like we are, like on Apple Podcasts, on I think all the platforms that we're on. So
Yeah, he's on Facebook and Twitter, and I don't know, is he on Instagram?
Yeah, he is. He's
Okay.
following us, and we're following him. And so,
Okay.
yeah, go check him out. It's called Conversations of the Strange, and we are on his latest episode talking about the Missy Bevers case, of course.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I hope we get to do some more of those because that was really neat, being a guest on somebody else's show and kind of explaining to them, about the murder because they weren't familiar, too familiar with it. And then seeing how somebody else does their podcast. It's kind of a win-win because they kind of learn about us and we learn about them, and then maybe learn, you know what I mean? Kind of everything in between.
Yeah, and it gave us a new place to talk about Missy's case and hopefully raise awareness with his audience members to follow her case.
Right. Absolutely. And speaking of the nice message that we received from one of our listeners, if anybody wants to send us a message like that, and what I mean by that is like you want to talk about something that we are talking about on our podcast, you can do it that way too. You can send us a message and we can, just listen to your message and reply.
And also, it doesn't have to be through Anchor. I know a lot of times, Renee, you and I in the past, we have hit the little microphone button on Messenger and told each other things.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another cool way you can do it. So yeah, we're here. We're available to you, and we want to do episodes on things that you're interested in. So please let us know if there's anything you want us to cover, and we will do the research. If it's something we're not really familiar with, we'll try to figure it out and bring it to you here on one of our episodes.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in to True Crime Broads. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a good
night.
Have a good day. Bye.